Okay, let's unpack this. I have to be honest with you. When I first saw the topic for today's deep dive, hiring a ferry pilot, my brain, um, it immediately went to the water.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
I'm picturing a guy in a captain's hat steering a massive boat across the harbor, a few cars on the deck, commuters sipping coffee, seagulls overhead. But then I opened the source material you brought in, and,
Yeah.
well, we're definitely not talking about boats, are we?
Not even a little bit, no. Although I suppose the fundamental concept isn't that far off. You are taking a vessel from point A to point B.
True.
But in aviation, ferrying is this invisible, critical nervous system of the entire industry. It's how the ecosystem functions. Without it, planes would just be, expensive lawn ornaments stuck in all the wrong places.
So let's set the stakes for the listener right away, because this isn't just about moving a machine. This feels like a huge logistical puzzle.
It is. Imagine the scenario. You've finally done it. You've bought the dream plane. Maybe it's a classic Cessna 172 to fly on weekends, or maybe your company just dropped a few million on a fancy turboprop.
Living the dream.
You are ecstatic. But there's a massive catch. You live in Oregon. The plane is sitting on a hot tarmac in, say, Florida.
And unlike a car, I can't just fly down there and drive it back easily. I mean, I could try, but...
Well, exactly. Maybe you can fly, but do you have the experience for a cross-country trip? You're talking about 3 distinct climate zones, dealing with mountain waves over the Rockies and then thunderstorms in the south.
Yeah, no thanks.
Or take the corporate angle, your jet is broken. It needs to go to a specialist maintenance facility 3 states away, but it's not airworthy for passengers. You can't just Amazon Prime a plane to your driveway.
So you have to hire a ferry pilot.
And this is where I honestly thought it would be simple. I
Yeah.
assumed you just go on an app like an Uber for pilots, tap a button, and someone shows up with a headset.
But reading through this stack of research, it seems like I walked into a legal and logistical minefield.
It is absolutely a minefield, and that is our mission today, to unpack that complexity. We aren't just talking about flying a plane. We're talking about a legal maze involving the FAA, some honestly shocking costs, insurance hurdles that can stop you cold.
And what you called the MacGyver-like skills required to be the person in that cockpit.
Exactly that.
I really want to get to the MacGyver stuff later because that paints such a vivid picture. But let's start with my Uber idea. If I need to move this hypothetical plane from Florida to Oregon, how do I actually find a human being to do it?
Well, the market is starkly divided. You essentially have 2 camps, the professionals and the Wild West.
That sounds ominous. Who are the professionals in this context?
These are the specialized ferry service companies.
Yeah.
The sources mention outfits like Flight Crew International, the Ferry Pilots Ltd, things like that. Think of these as the concierge option. You hire the company, and they handle the headache. They get the permits, they plan the logistics, they have a roster of pilots, usually off-duty airline pilots or corporate veterans, who do this on the side.
Okay, so that's the safe corporate route, likely expensive but secure. What does the Wild West look like?
That is the freelance world, the gig economy of the skies. You're looking at classified sites like Barnstormers or Trade a Plane, or you're scrolling through forums like Pilots of America.
Oh, wow.
You might see a post from a guy saying, professional ferry pilot, 1,500 hours, will fly anywhere for expenses plus a daily rate.
It feels a bit like finding a contractor to renovate your kitchen on Craigslist.
It's a very apt comparison. And just like that kitchen renovation, if you hire the wrong person, the consequences are expensive and, well, potentially dangerous. This is where the first major aha moment needs to happen for the owner.
Yeah.
Because usually the first thought is, hey, my buddy Bob has a pilot's license. I'll just give him $500 to fly it home for me.
Why is Bob a bad idea? If he has a license, isn't he legal?
Bob is a legally dangerous idea, unless Bob holds a specific piece of plastic. A commercial pilot certificate.
Ah.
See, in the U.S., a private pilot license is literally that private. You cannot be paid to fly. You can split costs, pro rata like sharing gas money, but you cannot make a profit or receive compensation.
Got it.
To accept money for pilot services, you must hold a commercial license, at minimum.
Okay, so Bob needs a commercial license. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You need a commercial license to drive a truck commercially, too. But there was a term in the reading that really confused me. It said ferry pilots can be paid, but they can't Hold out.
Yes.
It sounds like they're refusing to shake hands. What does holding out actually mean in this context?
It's one of the most misunderstood concepts in aviation law, specifically regarding FAA Part 91 operations. Holding out is the FAA's term for acting like an airline.
Acting like an airline.
Yeah. If a pilot advertises to the general public that they will transport people or cargo from point A to point B for a fee, they are crossing the line into what's called common carriage.
Common carriage. You mean like a bus or a Delta Airlines flight?
Precisely. And that requires a Part 135 certificate, essentially an airline operating license. It's incredibly difficult and expensive to get. We're talking manuals, training programs, management teams. So a freelance ferry pilot walks a very fine line.
So they can't sell transportation.
No, they are selling pilot services.
That sounds like a semantic distinction without a real difference. I'm not selling the flight, I'm selling my service to fly.
It's subtle, but legally huge. Think of it like a chauffeur versus a taxi. A taxi sells you a ride. A chauffeur drives your car. A ferry pilot is saying, I will come to your location and operate your equipment for you.
Ah, so the owner is still in charge.
The owner retains operational control. The pilot is just a hired hand operating the controls. If that pilot puts up a website saying, I deliver planes, they're usually okay. If they put up a website saying, I will fly your family and your boxes to Florida, they're likely going to get a very unfriendly call from the FAA.
That is a crucial distinction. So they are selling their labor, not the flight itself. But even if the FAA is happy with your hire, the sources suggest there's a bigger boss we have to worry about.
Oh, yeah.
New insurance company.
In aviation, the insurance adjuster is basically the Supreme Court. You can be 100% legal with the FAA and still be 100% uninsured. This brings us to the open pilot warranty, or OPW.
I saw this acronym everywhere in the notes. Break it down for me.
Most aircraft insurance policies have a clause that basically says any pilot can fly this plane if they meet these specific numbers. For a simple Cessna 172, the bar is pretty low, maybe 200 hours total flying time.
Okay.
But if you bought that high-performance turboprop we mentioned, the insurance might demand 1,000 hours total time, 100 hours in retractable gear aircraft, and 25 hours in that specific make and model.
That time and type seems like the kicker. So if I find a freelancer on a forum who's flown 10,000 hours in massive 747s, but has 0 hours in my specific little turboprop,
then the flight is effectively uninsured. Unless you call your broker and beg for a waiver, and the broker might say no, or they might charge you a much higher premium. This is why that Wild West search is so tricky.
right.
You find a guy who is cheap and available, but if he doesn't meet the OPW, you are flying naked, financially speaking. If he scrapes a wingtip, that comes out of your pocket, not the insurance companies.
That is a terrifying phrase. Flying naked. Let's keep our clothes on and talk about the wallet. Moving a plane sounds expensive. The sources gave us some rules of thumb, but how much are we actually talking about here?
The general heuristic mentioned is that ferry costs run about 1% to 4% of the aircraft's value. So if you bought a $100,000 airplane, expect to pay between $1,000 and $4,000 to get it home.
That doesn't sound too bad. 1% seems manageable. If I buy a house, the closing costs are way higher than that.
It seems manageable until you start itemizing. The pilot's fee is just the tip of the iceberg. The pilot charges a daily rate. For a single-engine piston plane, the current market is about $400 to $500 per day. If you're moving a turboprop or a light jet, that jumps to maybe $650. Heavy corporate jets, you're looking at $1,500 a day.
Okay, but again, $500 a day for a skilled professional.
Yeah.
That's cheaper than my plumber.
True, but the plumber drives his own van and pays for his own gas. In ferry flying, the owner pays for everything. And I mean everything. The biggest cost is fuel.
Ah, of course.
If you're flying coast to coast, that fuel bill is going to be thousands of dollars. Then you have the pilot's hotels, their meals, airport landing fees, oil, and here's the one that catches people off guard, the pilot's airline ticket.
The return trip.
The return trip. And think about the logistics. You don't know exactly when the pilot will arrive because of weather, so you can't book a cheap ticket 3 weeks in advance.
Oh, man.
You are usually buying a last-minute, one-way commercial ticket from a tiny regional airport in Oregon back to a major hub in Florida. That alone can be $800 or $1,000.
Right. So the pilot doesn't just vanish into the ether when they hand you the keys. You're responsible for getting them home. I can see how that 4% figure creeps up fast.
Very fast.
Now, the source material really emphasized that you shouldn't do this on a handshake. You need a contract,
Absolutely. A handshake in aviation is a recipe for a lawsuit. You need a written agreement that covers the what-ifs. And the biggest what-if is the layover clause.
I found this interesting because it deals with the reality of weather.
Weather is the enemy of schedules. Let's say your pilot gets stuck in Kansas because of a massive blizzard. They might be grounded for 3 days. The contract needs to answer a specific question. Does the pilot still get paid their daily rate while sitting in a hotel watching the Weather Channel?
If I'm the owner, I'm thinking, why should I pay you? The plane didn't move. You didn't do the work.
But if you're the pilot, you're thinking, I'm stuck in Kansas. I can't go work another job. My time is consumed by this mission.
So who wins?
Usually the pilot. Or there is a negotiated layover rate, maybe half the daily rate. But if you don't agree on this beforehand, you end up with a very angry owner and a very demotivated pilot.
And you do not want a demotivated pilot flying your plane.
You do not, which leads perfectly into the pilot authority clause. This seemed like a safety valve.
It's non-negotiable.
It has to be. The contract must state that the ferry pilot has the final absolute say on safety. Whether it's weather or a mechanical quirk, if the pilot says we aren't flying, that's the end of the discussion.
Is that really necessary to put in writing? Isn't it obvious? I mean, who wants to die in a plane crash?
You'd be surprised what financial pressure does to people. Imagine an owner who is paying $500 a day plus hotels. Every day the plane sits, they are losing money. There is a huge financial incentive for the owner to call the pilot and say, hey, the forecast doesn't look that bad. Just go around the storm. I'm paying you to fly, not to sit. Exactly. Just push through it, Bob. I've got a schedule to keep. That pressure is dangerous. It's called get-home-itis, but applied by the owner. The contract protects the pilot from being fired or penalized for making a safety decision.
It empowers them to say no without fearing for their paycheck.
That's it.
Speaking of safety, let's talk about the machine itself. We mentioned buying a dream plane, but sometimes you're buying a fixer-upper, or maybe a plane that has been sitting in a barn for 5 years.
This is very common. In aviation, every plane needs an annual inspection. It's a legal requirement. If that inspection expires, even by 1 day, the plane is grounded. It is legally a brick. It cannot fly.
So this is a catch-22. I bought a plane in a barn. It needs an inspection to fly, but the shop is 500 miles away. How do I get it there if it can't fly?
You have to get the government involved. You need what's called a special flight permit, commonly known as a ferry permit from the FAA.
What does that entail? Is it just a form you download?
It's a process. You can't just print it out. A certified mechanic has to look at the plane and certify it is safe for flight, even if it doesn't meet all the legal airworthiness standards.
So things can be broken.
Yeah, maybe the radio doesn't work, or the upholstery is ripped out, or the transponder is dead. That's fine. But the engine and controls must be safe. Then the FAA grants a specific permit. You can fly from here to there for the purpose of maintenance only. No passengers, no cargo.
And I assume navigating that paperwork is part of what I'm paying the ferry pilot for.
100%. A good ferry pilot knows exactly which FSDO, the local FAA office, to call and how to phrase the request so it gets approved quickly. If you try to do it yourself, you might be waiting weeks.
This brings us to the pilot themselves.
No.
We talked about the legal side and the money, but I want to focus on the human in the cockpit. Because the more I read this, the more I realized this isn't just flying. It seems like a completely different skill set from being an airline pilot.
It's night and day. Think about an airline pilot. They show up to a gleaming terminal. A team of dispatchers has already planned the route, checked the fuel, filed the flight plan. A team of mechanics has just signed off on the jet.
Right, they just get in and go.
The pilot grabs a coffee, sits down, and flies. They are systems managers.
And the ferry pilot.
The ferry pilot is the dispatcher. They are the flight planning department. They are the concierge. They are analyzing weather across the entire continent. If you're flying that Florida to Oregon route in a small plane, that's a 3-day trip.
Right.
You might be dodging thunderstorms in the humid south on Monday and dealing with icing conditions over the Rockies on Wednesday.
And they're doing this alone.
Usually alone.
Yeah.
In a cockpit that might not have air conditioning or heating or a working autopilot. And this is where that MacGyver aptitude you mentioned comes in. The source calls these ferry planes unknown quantities.
Which is a polite way of saying potential ticking time bombs.
Thanks. Exactly. You've never flown this specific plane before. You don't know its quirks. Maybe the engine runs a little hot. Maybe the door seal whistles so loud you can't hear the radio. Maybe the fuel gauge is lying to you.
That sounds exhausting. You're hypervigilant the whole time.
You have to be. A ferry pilot needs mechanical sympathy. They need to be able to listen to the engine and know the difference between a normal vibration and a land right now vibration.
Right.
And if they get a flat tire at a tiny rural airport on a Sunday evening, there is no maintenance crew. They need to know how to jack up the plane and fix it, or at least jury-rig a solution to get it safe. They might be duct taping a window seal or adding oil in a snowstorm.
That explains why the insurance companies demand that 1,000-hour mark.
Yeah.
They aren't just paying for stick and rudder skills. They are paying for judgment and troubleshooting.
Exactly. They need a troubleshooter, part meteorologist,
Part mechanics.
and part diplomat to deal with the anxious owner.
It sounds romantic in a gritty way, but the reality described in the text seems pretty unglamorous.
There is zero glamour. The Wild West pilot isn't staying at the Ritz-Carlton. You're flying 8 to 10 hours a day in a loud, vibrating aluminum tube. You land at dusk, fueling yourself with gas station coffee. You find a cheap motel, crash, and do it all again at sunrise. It is lonely, physically punishing work.
So why do people do it, and how do you even break into this? If I'm a young pilot listening to this thinking, I want to be the MacGyver of the skies, what is the path?
Well, step one is the commercial pilot license and an instrument rating. The source is very clear. The instrument rating is basically mandatory. You cannot ferry planes reliably if you have to land every time you see a cloud. You'd never get anywhere.
Makes sense. But then you hit that experience wall we talked about,
Right.
the time and type.
The classic aviation catch-22. To get the insurance approval to fly a Piper Malibu, you need 25 hours in a Piper Malibu. But nobody will hire you to fly their Malibu because you don't have the 25 hours.
It feels impossible. How do
Yeah.
they bridge that gap?
Mentorship is the main way. You find one of those grumpy veterans, the guys who've been doing this for 30 years. You ask to ride along, you handle the radios, you pump the gas, you buy them dinner, and in exchange, you log the time.
Or you teach.
Or you work as a certified flight instructor, a CFI. That gives you access to a variety of student-owned planes, allowing you to build a diverse logbook over a few years.
And is there money in it? Can you make a living solely ferrying planes?
You can, but it's volatile. The source mentions a freelancer might have a unicorn month where they make $6,000 because everything lined up perfectly, but then the phone doesn't ring for 6 weeks.
Feast or famine.
Completely.
Yeah.
That's why you see two main demographics doing this. First, the airline pilots. They have a salary, they have days off, and they do this for fun money or just to keep their stick and rudder skills sharp.
And the second.
The semi-retired veterans, they have a pension, they have the experience, and they just want to stay active on their own terms. It is rarely a primary income for a young pilot unless they are hustling incredibly hard.
So if we look at the big picture here, hiring a ferry pilot is really a balance of cost versus competence.
That is the fundamental trade-off. It pushes the owner to answer a hard question about their own risk tolerance. You can go on the forums and hire the kid who is building hours. He might do it for $200 a day, and honestly, 9 times out of 10, it'll probably be fine.
But that one time out of 10.
That's when you wish you paid for the veteran. The veteran charges $500 or $600 a day, but they have the experience to say no. They have the experience to recognize that the weather pattern is shifting before it hits the radar. You are paying for the bad things not to happen.
It really highlights how much we rely on systems in modern life. We trust the app, we trust the airline schedule, but ferry flying feels like a throwback.
It really does. It's one of the last bastions of the bush pilot spirit in modern aviation. It's not about automation or stewards bringing you a drink or reliable schedules. It is just you, a machine that you are just getting to know, and 2,000 miles of unknown variables.
Man versus machine versus nature.
Precisely. And for the listener, whether you are an aspiring owner or just someone fascinated by logistics, it's a reminder that behind every shiny airplane sitting on a ramp, there was likely a lonely, exhausted pilot who fought some weather and stayed in a cheap motel to get it there.
I'll definitely look at those small planes differently next time I pass an airport. I think I know which pilot I'd hire, but I'll let the listeners decide for themselves. Thanks for navigating the details with us today.
Always a pleasure to clear up the turbulence.
That's it for this deep dive. Stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next flight.